because he suddenly went from this, pretty backwater Malaysian island to the school where Winston Churchill and others had studied.
Since the granting of the school's charter, 7 of Britain's prime ministers have been educated here. Sir Winston Churchill frequently revisited Harrow as one of its most distinguished old boys.
So Jolo was suddenly, studying alongside the King of Jordan's son, the children of royalty and Arab businessmen's kids, and these people were a lot wealthier than he was. And I think that really gave him an eye onto a different world of wealth, and is probably pretty crucial in his sort of psychological development.
In fact, Joe became really good friends with Riza in London. And he also got to know Riza's mother, Rosma.
And Rosma was the wife of Najib.
Riza Aziz was the stepson of the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
And friends with them all was Jolo.
In September 2014, I wanted to see if Joe and Najib would meet up in New York. They were both in town during the United Nations General Assembly. My colleague Stephanie Saul and I staked out the Time Warner Center. Stephanie stood outside and would tell me when anyone was coming up. And I was upstairs in the lobby of the Mandarin Oriental. First, she texted me. I stood at the ready of the elevator. Out he came. He walked over and sat in the bar. A little while later, she texted. Again, I was at the ready of the elevator. Najib walked around to the entrance to the hotel rooms. It was not more than 2 minutes. Joe stood up from the bar, walked over, and followed Najib up into the rooms. I asked Joe and Najib's representatives about this. They confirmed they had been up there meeting. They said it was a short social gathering. End of story. But, a lot was going on right then in the story of 1MDB and this money trail, and I do wonder what they were talking about up there.
When Najib Razak took over as the Prime Minister of Malaysia, he came up with this idea to set up an investment fund called 1MDB. The trust fund that brings returns for the future of the people. And every cent of that came from Malaysian taxpayers. When I found out that 1MDB invested $1 billion in a company called PetroSaudi, the first thing you do is you check who PetroSaudi is. It is a fantastic name. Petroleum, at that point in time, $110 per barrel. Saudi Arabia, the king of petroleum. This has to be a jackpot company. Then when you do a search on PetroSaudi, you realize that the founder, Tariq Obaid, there was no reference of him in Google any time before 2009. And I discovered that he was only 32 years old. It was then that we found out that when 1MDB actually invested the $1 billion in PetroSaudi was barely a year old. So All those little facts put together rang huge alarm bells that there's something fishy with this investment. And that's when I raised my first question in March 2010 in Parliament. Who guarantees this loan? They said PetroSaudi guarantees the loan. On a corporate guarantee, what is their paid-up capital? How much money do they have? What is their financial reserve? Can you show us the statement such that they can actually guarantee a $1 billion loan? Confidential.
I had always asked the question, why was 1MDB not subject to the same oversight as the rest of the government companies? So I then got hold of my other brothers and we met Najib and told him that, look, we are very concerned about this and how that's somewhat conflicted with the kind of values that our father had. Public service, integrity, frugality. Najib said he would look into the matter and that he would fix any shortcomings at 1MDB.
It came to my attention 1MDB had raised bonds, public debt, with Goldman Sachs. Debt that the people of Malaysia would have to pay back. Goldman Sachs was being paid huge amounts. And anyone who's making atypically huge fees, you have to ask why. I thought, I can't wait to meet with this person, and we did meet. And I got a lot of information about how close Joe Low was to these transactions. Joe Low popped up on everything. He's secretly getting consulting fees from 1MDB. He's in the VIP area at the Wolf of Wall Street after party, and he's thanked in the credits. Joe and Riza passing money between them behind shell companies and real estate. And so the very tight connection between Joe Low and the Prime Minister's family and the Malaysian people's money was becoming very clear.
And they were each pieces in a puzzle, and I put this whole puzzle together.
I read the New York Times article. I was shocked, but also extremely embarrassed. I didn't know Joe Low. I think I shook his hand a couple of times, but I didn't know him. But the idea that he was in some way linked to my brother and potentially spending Malaysian taxpayers' money really disgusted me.
I knew that there were documents that were available, that were for sale, that purported to show details of money moving between 1MDB and Joe Low. Leaked documents. Those were the smoking gun.
This is a triumph of journalism, of different parties working together around the world to uncover this massive, massive scandal. The work done by the New York Times, online whistleblower, Sarah Report, and of course in Malaysia you have the Age publications who got into trouble with the authorities.
We will not apologize because we have not done anything wrong. Okay? We stand by everything we have published. And I would like to add one thing. None of the article we have published has been challenged.
The Sarawak report came out with this bombshell in February of 2015. $700 million had been taken from the fund under the guise of being sent to a joint venture with a Saudi Arabian oil company.
When Sarawak report first published the joint venture agreement between 1MDB and PetroSaudi, it was explosive. That was the first time we get a peek into the hidden operations within 1MDB on how they were scamming the money from the Malaysian people. It was depressing. People were angry.
The documents showed that $700 million had ended up in an offshore company allegedly controlled by Jolo.
For the record, do you have any involvement or have you had any involvement with One Malaysia Development Berhad?
I believe that this is a politically sort of charged effort to try and put the blame on me when truly I have no decision-making authority.
Why would you be a political target in this unfolding scandal?
I think it's because it may have stemmed from my 16-year friendship with Reza Aziz, who is, of course, the stepson of the Malaysian Prime Minister. And I feel like I'm just an easy target and a victim because of my age and, unfortunately, some of the things that I've done in my early years of partying that, I had a bit too much fun then.
The Jolo birthday party was a spectacle in every sense. They had hired at least 250 of the most gorgeous-looking models from all over America to be cocktail waitresses at this party, and they were all identically dressed in red. They made a stunning visual impact, and all of them were walking around with magnums of Cristal. I remember standing at the bar with Britney Spears as she was waiting her turn to go on to sing Happy Birthday. And then Jamie Foxx walked on to be the MC. And now you're paying attention. You're saying this is no ordinary party. This was now big money. I was introduced to Jolo, and he was a super rich playboy billionaire holding court. Around Jolo were security people. It's like a wedding cake, if you can imagine. Mr. Malaysian Moneybags was at the very top, and then there were these tiers that came down, and you were either in tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3. Paris Hilton was ushered right into the intimate circle. There was this huge turnout of celebrities, including DiCaprio. The list is endless. You could run a movie credits crawl on the screen of all the people that were there. This was the entrance to the party. I went back to look at it the next day, and it was like it never ever happened. It had gone. It didn't exist 3 days beforehand. It didn't exist 24 hours afterwards. I mean, it was a proper circus tent with a giant Ferris wheel inside. I don't think I would be wrong if I described it as the best and the most expensive party that Las Vegas has ever seen. To do what they did, a Ferris wheel, amusement games, an arcade, security, The food, the drinks, the gifts, the stars, the celebrities. That must have cost $100 million. In the end, none of it really made sense. If somebody is spending that kind of money, that freely, it cannot have come from legitimate sources.
How do we define value?
We interviewed Joe Low at the Journal in 2014, and we wrote a story about him as an investor.
It is about how each deal changes a community, a country, and the world.
There's this video that Joe Low creates. It's an attempt to portray himself as a jet-setting corporate titan.
Our approach is to fundamentally question how quality is created, how to enhance value, identify synergies, capitalize on it.
And the backstory that he gave to people was that his family had a lot of money, and it was investing money on behalf of his grandfather and his father, who'd made billions in iron ore mining in Thailand. But as soon as people put real resources into trying to find out about his grandfather, you only needed to ask a few people in Malaysia, and you realize he didn't have billions. At least not, he didn't inherit billions. He then started to donate a lot of money to cancer centers, to the United Nations. And I think that, again, was an attempt to make it appear that he was this real businessman. So the questions about where his money came from, he hoped would go away. But we kept digging, and in the summer of 2015, it came out with this much bigger story.
The Wall Street Journal came into possession of secret documents that revealed a very large payment of about $681 million paid into the personal bank account of the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And that was a big fact. And it was a mystery that needed to be solved. And then we came into possession of these BlackBerry Messenger transcripts between Joe Low and one of the mid-level bankers that oversaw the Prime Minister's accounts. One of these descriptions refers to 681 American pies about to come into the Prime Minister's bank account. The bank records show 681 million American dollars are transferred in. In this case, the American pie means $1 million. So that was the code word. Until that point, we hadn't really connected Joe Low to the transfer to the Prime Minister. It showed that he was there stage managing these discussions and setting things up. And it just really proved his instrumental role in the case.
He's asking bankers at Ambank, a bank that he used and the Prime Minister used, to do things so compliance cannot see. And he's asking, please move this money here, that money there. Please just tell them Najib wants this. And he's very impatient, he's very distracted. I'd say from reading the BlackBerry messages, the general impression you get is that Joe Low is cutting a lot of corners.